Mayor Fuentes is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll all say it together, but he'll be in charge, and he has a reminder for him. Don't you be nervous. You're fine. You're mayor.
That's right.
So I call this meeting to order. I call this meeting to order.
I call this meeting to order.
Very good. You were saying towards the flag.
Aren't you?
You're fine.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor. That's one of the most fun things about city council is to get to do the pledge. Now, I'm going to ask the city treasurer to please give the roll call.
What does that mean?
That's, she'll have everybody say whether they're here or not. And just say, could the city treasurer please call the roll?
City treasurer, please call the roll.
Okay, Steve Johnston's gone today. Dave Jones.
Here.
Lauren Meeker.
Here.
Ellie Casey. Here. Andy Holm.
Here.
Gilberto Ontiveros.
Here.
And Maya Walling.
Here.
Very good. And what we're following is just a check. And the next thing will be,
We'll need a motion for Steve to be.
oh, that's true.
I'll make the motion to excuse Steve.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to excuse Councilman Steve Johnston from attendance at this meeting. You don't have to say it. We'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We got that one done. The next one is, what I usually do is just announce. The next item on the agenda is the public comment for that part right there. What do you call that?
Closed public comment again. Busing this only comments limited 3 minutes.
Do we have anyone here for this public comment on the Zoom or on the telephone or here in our council chamber?
Me and you.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yes, there you are.
Oh, wait.
And that's Mr. Roger Nichols.
Roger has a comment, public comment.
Roger.
Thank you. I would like to know the name of the young gentleman mayor so I can report it into the newspaper.
You want to call out your name?
Brent.
What's your last name, please?
Fuentes.
Thank you so much and congratulations.
You'll record a meeting and write a report for the newspaper. You'll see it Wednesday. That's tomorrow. Okay, the next item is the public hearing. And these part right here, Mayor Cannon will do just, I mess it up bad enough. I don't want to teach you how to mess things up. The next item is our public hearing. We'll open the public hearing. This is on wastewater improvement project. Is anyone here to offer comments or testimony on the wastewater improvement project? Anyone on the line or on Zoom? Yes.
Just a question, I'd like to know how long this, the life cycle is for this next phase of improvement and what the anticipated next improvement will be.
On the wastewater treatment.
So on this current project, so these are the grit removal stuff. I don't know, there's another phase. But this is going out to, this is part of the process we have to do for the grant. To start the project, we got to get this submitted in, that we've had another public hearing on it. And once that's done, the project's under review right now by the Department of Ecology, the design. And once they approve that design, we'll start on the project.
So can the design engineers provide a lifespan for this project and the projected next improvement that would be needed?
Yeah, I can get that, so. We did, I did have this designed, so that, that was one of the things that held up, as after I started, I had them design for future improvements, where those future improvements would set, so that when this was placed, it was placed properly to separate the grit from both of the new system and the old system. Because we won't probably abandon the whole complete old system, which is primarily the aeration basin and the clarifiers. So that when they build another aeration basin, this one will handle the grit removal for that one. Part of the project was originally to try to remove the grit from the current aeration. We felt that was too much risk and worried about tearing the liner, trying to get the grit out of there. So we've got another route, and we're going to raise the aeration system up, and then with the grit removal, we should not have any more problems with that aerator. Right now it's overfilling the aerator, and we're not getting enough aeration in the system. At some point, the clarifiers, I'll try to have them give you an estimate of when they feel that they're going to need to be replaced, but the clarifiers will need to be replaced. We can't shut the plant down or just isolate the clarifiers from the plant. So when they're abandoned, they're just going to have to be abandoned in place. It's how I have to go out there and show you why. So.
But their design is accommodating for that and building the next clarifier without having to reconfigure the grid removal again.
Yes, yeah, and that's all on the map system. I can have them bring in some.
Any other comments or questions? If not, are there further comments or questions online, the telephone, or on the Zoom podcast? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. We don't do that with a motion, do we? Okay, good. Got to make sure. The next item is the agenda, and what you need to do is say, motion to accept the agenda and the consent agenda.
We need a motion to accept the agenda to present to them.
We have a motion.
I move to accept the agenda and consent agenda.
I'll second that motion.
Second. Go ahead for that. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda and consent agenda for this city council meeting of 6 September 2023. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next item is the presentation. So what will happen now is the presenters will come up and they'll start the presentation on the fire systems and the fire wildfires and all kinds of fire things. The mayor, for instance, arrived here on the fire truck, so he's very close to this. And you can sit here with me and listen to it, or you can go sit with your mom, either way. We don't have to say any more, we're busy here.
Good job. I'd stay in command too.
Yep. You did a good job.
All right, I'll stand over here. I'll introduce Jeff King, Director of Emergency Management, NOAA, and a representative from DNR was not able to make it, but the reason I asked for these gentlemen to come up is they would be our subject matter experts in wildland fires. And with all the wildfires going around across our state and our country, the conversation and the reality that that threat exists over Goldendale is pretty significant. And through all my involvements with different organizations and through my work, the one thing I see is there's always more to know and there's always more to prepare. When things happen and you're not prepared, I mean, you can plan for everything, they're still gonna happen, but when you're not prepared, you're not able to react accordingly to them, and then it causes more delays, and it causes more delays for people to get help. So that's why I wanted these gentlemen to come up. So I'll open it to our Director of Emergency Management, Jeff King, and Frank Huey, and then we'll go to Noah Holm, our Chief.
Thanks for that. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Mayor for a day, City Council members, staff, and the public. I wanted to start out, and I thank you for this opportunity to talk to you. You should have a blue bag. If you don't, get one. We've got a few items in there about what we do and flyers on how to sign up for our emergency notification system and so on, which Frank will talk about later. I wanted to start out my presentation just to make sure everybody knew that the Klickitat County Department of Emergency Management not only represents the county government, but also all 3 cities. That includes you, through an interlocal agreement between the county and all 3 cities. My department, for the emergency management program activity specifically, represents every person in the county, and that's who we serve. The department as a whole is comprised of 4 separate functions. First one is 911 call taking. The next one is emergency radio dispatching, and we dispatch for all emergency services in the county. And to do that, we use the public safety radio system, and we manage the operations and maintenance of that system countywide. And then what we're really here to talk about tonight is the emergency management program. And historically, I've got a whole speech about this that I give to groups, what our department is and does. I'm condensing it down. I was told tonight we only had 10 minutes per, but now that DNR didn't show up, that means we got 20, right?
Sure.
Don't give me the license to do that. Right. Wildfire, historically speaking, the statistics prove out that wildfire is the 2nd biggest hazard to our county and the residents in it. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. And there have been several recent case in points. The most recent and impactful to us in the state of Washington was the fires in the northeast part of the state, Spokane and Pendleton counties specifically. On that first Friday afternoon, just to put an emphasis on what can happen in this age of wildfire and mega wildfires, that the city of Medical Lake was put on a level 3 evacuation within a short period of time after that fire got started. By the end of that Friday afternoon, in the first 24 hours mostly, there was 185 structures burnt and 9,500 acres and 0% containment. We all live with wildfire. We just saw what happened. Newell Road fire burnt 60,000 acres in our county. This is how it can impact a city or a town, and Goldendale is no exception. In that case, the Spokane County Sheriff's Office deployed helicopter flight crews on that Friday afternoon to evacuate residents that were inside the fire zone because they couldn't get out by any other means. Thankfully, Spokane County has its own helicopter. That's nice. In the end, that fire burned over 20,900 acres. Actually, there was 2 fires, not to be confused. The Oregon fire in Washington, in Spokane. They named it the Oregon fire. As well as the Gray fire, which impacted Medical Lake and had the biggest losses. In total, in those 2 fires, there was 356 homes lost. Just homes. Usually they report on structures, don't differentiate. But in this case, they did the count for just homes, and that was pretty impactful. We've all seen the news about the Maui fires and the issues that they had with notifying the public, and getting evacuations for those populated areas to actually work. Those are all challenges that we will face here if wildfire ever threatens the city in mass. Even if the technology still exists that we can notify people to evacuate, evacuating all the residents of Goldendale at one time will be a significant challenge. So with that, I would like to encourage any and all of you to attend what we're going to sponsor, and Mayor Cannon did this just before COVID, actually. On days we hadn't activated the EOC yet, but we were working on it. What's the last time we offered this training? And the mayor and the other two mayors attended, and some other folks. It is a overview for senior officials. So everybody in this room, electeds, appointeds, and their staff, to know how you fit in during an emergency, what your roles and responsibilities are under the National Incident Management System. The purpose of this course is to familiarize senior officials with their roles in supporting the incident management. And the course objectives is to teach you about that National Incident Management System, the organizational structure of Incident Command System, the roles and responsibilities of the Command and General Staff, as well as the Emergency Operations Staff, and your role to fit into all of that. When we get to this level of incident, there's a lot of things going on and a lot of pieces to the puzzle that if you are brand new to it, you will struggle to understand, let alone fit in. And I think Mayor Cannon can attest to that.
Exactly.
That training just prior to activating the EOC for a COVID emergency was probably very helpful.
Yes.
Without it, you'll be lost. So we plan to offer that through the Department of Emergency Management for all officials in the county early spring next year. And that's all I have. I'm going to turn the details over to Phil, because Frank. Sorry. Ouch. Because, yeah, and I'll be available to answer any questions, but the main point is that it can happen here. It has happened to other cities and towns in our state already, and it nearly happened in Bickleton back in July to that community. So we're not immune. Let's do what we can to prepare for that, and as your emergency management department, we are here to facilitate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Frank Huey, Emergency Management Program Coordinator for the county.
Frank, can you spell your last name just for the record?
I can. Yeah.
Yeah.
H-E-W-E-Y.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's not spelled normally. I'm not sure if it was a happy accident or planned, but just happens to be that September is the National Emergency Preparedness Month. So this is great timing to be talking about this stuff. Not sure why it's September, but it just is. And emergency preparedness is a perishable skill. All the stuff that we talk about, and Jeff was talking about the terminology, the plans and all that, we don't use them that often. So when we don't use them, the stuff that we had talked about, agreed upon, we forget about and all that. So we have to have these conversations. And that's what the training's about. We're grateful to be invited to be here. But we try to get the word out to the residents. Again, the emergency preparedness is perishable. And knowing what your evacuation route is, or how you're going to notify somebody, or what you're going to plan for, or the amount of food that you're going to have on the shelves, and all those things before the event happens. But we saw what happened with COVID, with shelves in the stores getting emptied. If we have a major event, it's going to be worse. The fuel is going to be bad and things like that. So, please think about that stuff. In the bag that we gave you tonight, there's a book in there about 2-week preparedness. What we're saying is that it'll take at least a week or two before real help arrives. If something major were to happen here, we're probably not going to be the only community, and resources are scarce. So people should be prepared to take care of themselves and be so self-sufficient as best they can, So the limited resources that we do have, we can get out there where the need is at. Whether that's knowing where you're taking your livestock, or how you're gonna be able to your family, how you're gonna get the word out. Cell phones are gonna be going down. Well, how do we get that information out? Excuse me. Also in there is a card to sign up for the emergency notification system. And that is a free service provided by the county. And you can go to the county webpage, and on every department's page there is sign up for emergency alerts access there. It takes 5 minutes to sign up, and we recommend the household, because when you sign up for one account, you can sign up for 3 cell phone numbers, 3 landline numbers, 3 emails. So when we send out a notification based on the address, we can notify the entire family. I tend to recommend if you could put somebody that's out of the area, family member, that have them so they can get to work, and maybe you can contact them. They're hearing the news of what's going on, so they know what's going on, and then we can talk about ourselves. Is if you can't reach me, if my wife can't reach me, then we both call her mom, and so I'll call and leave a message for her, and vice versa. And we can use it as relay, because sometimes the message can get out to somebody outside the area than it can locally. Those are just little things to think about. And like I said, so you have the 3 email addresses and the cell phones and all that. But that's how we get the word out, whether that's for evacuation levels or general information during an emergency. So with the Newell Road fire, we sent out 34 or 35 different evacuation level messages over the course of that week. Whether that was the initial evacuation notice, be prepared to leave, or upgrading and downgrading, and that's how we get the word out. Because everybody's told we can't go door to door and things like that. And if it's just general information, and we draw maps and we draw lines on there. Well, how come I didn't get notified? Our first question is, are you signed up for the emergency notification system? Well, I get Amber alerts, and it's not the same thing. So then we have to get them signed up. We sign them up there on the spot, and then they get the follow-up messages. But we do ask that people get signed up for it in advance. And if you signed up 5 years ago, you should still be good, but verify that. Verify your phone number is still accurate. And it goes out pretty quick. And when we send that out, we're also sending out media reports to the local radio, the over-the-air TV. We don't have the national cable stuff going on. But monitor your local radio, 1400 for Goldendale. But we also go with Benton County Radio over there for the east side of the county. And then so we also go with the radio stations over in Hood River for the western side of the county. So whenever we send a message out, we're already blasting that out to everybody at the same time. That's the best way to stay on top of that. And when we send the messages out and the media reports, we put our EOC phone number on there. We ask that people contact the EOC at that phone number and not call the non-emergency number at the dispatchers. People like to do that, but they're busy and they don't have the most up-to-date information, because if you haven't been there, the EOC is in the basement of that building and they don't have the information that we have down there. So we ask people to call the EOC. And Jeff brought up about the class for elected officials. And one of those things is we're asking that, at least at the beginning of an emergency, if it affects Goldendale, is that we have an in-person representation from the city in the EOC that can make contact or make decisions, or at least be working around like that. So we're not trying to do it through a phone call. It's really difficult to get timely information out or get timely answers if we have to do it through a phone call or through an email. And as things wind down, then they go back to the city building. We do it that way. Did you have a question, sir? Okay, I just want to make sure I covered it. And Jeff and I are the only paid people that work in that EOC. All the rest are volunteers, so members of the community. And everybody knows that volunteers right now are hard to come by. And if the emergency is in Goldendale, my volunteers that live in Goldendale will probably not be in the EOC. They're going to be taking care of their family. We had the night road fire, and I got an evacuation notice. Oh no. And so I tell the boss, I can't make it. I have to evacuate my family and my horses and all that. And it's my job. It's just like a mechanic. Who has the worst running cars? Mechanics, right, at home? It was pathetic how long it took me to get my horse trailer and those horses loaded up and the dogs loaded up and get my stuff in there, the important stuff. How long it took me to get myself out the door. I said, this looks really, really bad right now. I couldn't find what I was looking for. I mean, all my papers were in a binder, I got that. But all the other stuff, all the stuff that I talked to people about, I was probably the worst one. It was not, yeah, it was an poster child for emergency management that day. And I got out, and luckily I got home that night. So the same thing. So if you know people that want to volunteer in their community, if you want to have something else to do, we provide the training. We can certainly use volunteers. That's anybody on TV. And I think I've got everything covered. Oh, yeah, and know your evacuation routes. That's the biggest thing. And things are going to get sketchy. And what you think is your evacuation route, where am I going to go? If I have to go north, do I have to go south, do I have to go east, go west? How am I going to get there? And it may be different today than it was tomorrow or yesterday. Something's closed down, something's busy, and I have to find another way to get there. And things are going to be, roads are going to be full. That would be the nicest way I could put that. So, did I cover everything that y'all are interested in, I hope? Mayor, are you okay? You got any questions? No? All right, well, congratulations, sir.
Well, I just wanted one thing.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything that you or Jeff like to bring up that you'd like the city to be more help? Is there any certain item?
I think it's just making sure that we have the open line of communication, that we have those relationships and start working on that before. And I'm terrible. I've been with the county now for 2 years. Things are getting better, but I think we need to get those communications and actually make sure I have accurate phone numbers and things like that, because we found that's an issue. And like he brought up is when we have the opportunity for that training for elected officials, that we take advantage of that. I can most certainly have more than one class. If I have a full class of just Goldendale officials, I will most certainly give the training twice. I would look forward to that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, good, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? And I guess I'm going to be followed by Chief Noah here.
Thanks, Frank.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I was hoping that DNR was going to be here because one of their topics would be like fire-wise, so fuel mitigation, and I was going to follow up with like city ordinances and enforcement to coincide with that. So I'm not really good with the fire-wise stuff, so we're going to skip over that. But I will talk about city ordinances and stuff like that for tall grass, what would you call it, like trash around.
Code enforcement.
Just code enforcement, debris and different things like that. It's important that the city looks in that and follows through. I know Mike, the code guy now, is doing a really good job at making sure that he's getting those letters out there. But you know, that's something that we as a city can look at, and because obviously that's going to cause a lot of spread to the fire if it does end up coming into the city limits of Goldendale and pushing its way through it. So, and I wanted to touch on what Frank was saying about like people going in the area of the actual incident, you know, like plan your way out, and once you're out of there, try not to come back. Try to get a hold of, I don't know, non-emergency number or something like that. It causes a lot of issues with first responders trying to get in there. So night road fire, we had people trying to go to check on their brother, cousin, whatever, and we were actively trying to fight the fire in a dangerous situation, and having to deal with the public that way is very difficult. So in the city limits, I'll talk about city limits for right now. Our initial response, we just pulled the numbers for this year. We're about 7 minutes average response time, and that's from getting paged out from emergency man or dispatch, paging us out, and us being on scene is about 7 minutes. That's huge. When you think about waking up in the middle of the night, 1 o'clock in the morning, trying to figure out what's going on because you just woke up, and you know, getting down to the fire hall, getting in the fire truck, and getting on the scene. 7 minutes is phenomenal time. Of course, that would change depending on your time of day, what the weather is, different aspects like that. Most likely to have a major incident come into the city limits of Goldendale, it's going to be coming from outside of our jurisdiction, so maybe Centerville, Rural 7, fires pushing into Goldendale this way. So at that point, we're going to have, obviously, whole county mutual aid agreements that we do have in place, kind of working on that, and even a 5-county mutual aid agreement that we're trying to work on too. But all of that stuff is happening, and so that fire's coming into town. That's when we're going to call in more resources to get that fire taken care of. The good thing that we have is, like I said, the response from our department and mutual aid department is pretty huge and is pretty valuable as far as getting the fires knocked down. The other good thing is we have water supply. So if I'm not mistaken, the fire in Hawaii, they shut off water to certain parts or something.
I won't speak to that, but we had to do that. The PUD stopped fire apparatus from drafting out both Roosevelt's water system and Bickleton's during the Middle Road fire because the water supply had been drained to a certain level that it wasn't safe anymore.
Yeah, so yeah, water systems, obviously it's for the citizens to get drinking water and water for different, the city limit, or the city of Goldendale has, Pat, and you can chime in on this, but the system is really good. The amount of water that we can, the city of Goldendale can produce could potentially suffice a big incident like this, right? Because obviously you got a fire coming in, you're gonna need a lot of water, especially if it starts getting into houses and different things like that, we're gonna need a lot of water. And I believe that our system will be able to handle that.
Yeah, and they're also set up for generator backup. So
backup.
if there's a power outage, it can still produce the water.
Yep, so working with the PUD, I know most of our water systems do not have backup generators. So when you lose power, did they lose power out?
Not during that incident for the reservoir, no.
Okay.
And
So-
then the PUD did bring out a temporary backup generator
Yeah, for Bickleton.
in
Yeah.
case they needed it.
So smaller communities may or may not have water, importance of water tenders. And it seems like this year in particularly, correct me if I'm wrong, Phil or Jeff, tender operators are kind of dying down, goes with the volunteerism. Water is a hot commodity when it comes to these fires. Without water, it's very difficult to stop the fires. So Phil also wanted me to talk about the Insurance Rating Bureau. So our insurance inside the city limits is all based off of what the Insurance Rating Bureau tells us. And so that rate, we're currently a 6, so that dictates how much you pay for insurance in the city limits, or a 5-mile radius around a fire station. And what they look at is they look at our engines, make sure that we have enough engines to supply enough water or fire flow to certain buildings in our community, which I believe the high school is one of the highest ones that we have. I think it's around 5,000 gallons a minute, but I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me. The response of our firefighters, so they don't necessarily look at wildland response, EMS response, or anything like that. They look at specifically structure fire incidents. How many people responded and how many trucks and how many people responded. They also look at like our hoses and equipment, the maintenance on the trucks, hoses, air packs, ladders. So that's something that we actually pay for. People coming in to do pump tests on the trucks, ladder testing, SCBA, testing our SCBAs. They actually do, they look at the dispatch center. Not very well. They have looked at the dispatch center.
We fixed that last time.
Okay, Jeff
They made
fixed
them
that.
come and meet with me, they just did it random.
So
I don't think you got enough.
the last time we had the rating bureau in, the dispatch never was talked to, so now we think we've got it fixed, obviously. And then our water distribution system here in town, so fire flow, what can our system provide water to these certain incidents, which, like I said, they're great. The only thing is hydrant testing, different things like that, that's the only thing that we were down on deficiency points on that. So with all of that, that's what the fire department's doing to get our rating down there, and it doesn't necessarily coincide with an incident coming into town from a wildland type incident or anything like that. But what it does is, it does show that we have a good water system. And if we ever did have that kind of an incident coming in, our structure engines, I mean, if you had a big incident like that, we got deck guns and stuff like that, I guess, you know, I don't know what we would do, to be honest with you. That's why we're talking about it now, right? But we have the fire flow or water flow to be able to try to do something. And then our volunteers. So our volunteers put a lot of time in, not only during training and on the call itself, you know, putting out the fire, doing mop up, all that nasty stuff. We've got cleaning of the apparatus, equipment, all that stuff when we come back, repair of the apparatus, equipment when we come back. After action reviews, so after a major fire, we like to talk about it and just talk about what was good, what was bad, all that stuff. And then reports. So people got to write reports and we turn them into the state and government, all that stuff. I think I've got everything covered in there. The blue bags have some emergency management stuff. They also have, it's called the Ready, Set, Go program. Basically it talks, Phil, you might have to help me out on this one, but I believe it talks about Firewise type stuff, and also like that bag is meant to be like a to-go bag. So Frank was talking about how it took him a long time to get his stuff organized and out the door. There's information in there to help you prepare it for a to-go bag, I guess.
A couple of questions for you. Since the DNR is not here, maybe you guys can talk about, I know Jeff might have more information on the insurance changes north of Broadway to Goldendale. Those meetings were done. I don't know all the facts, but how that was changed. And then
It's not just north of,
or even south of Broadway, right? Around the area of Broadway.
there's some people out on 21st Street that lost their insurance for the same thing.
And then during the wildland fire, not all homes are protected. How do you choose which homes get protected when you have so many houses, so much fire, and so little apparatus in comparison?
Yeah, let's see if I can butcher that one for you. You don't necessarily think about it in town, excuse me, as much as you would like out in the urban interface, let's just say Box Canyon area where you have 10, 20 acres spreading houses apart. Basically you're going to a house to see if we can protect it. So many resources are coming to the fire to actually put the head of the fire out to stop the fire growing anymore. A lot of the times the houses, it's not that they get forget about, it's that we don't have enough resources to set on every single house. So they get looked at, they look at them, and what's the name of that?
Ingress, egress.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking risk analysis. Yeah, so they're looking at a whole bunch of different things. First and foremost is, can we protect that house? Is there a little bit of mitigation that we can do to that house that the fire can go right around it and it's not going to bother it? Or do we need to set a truck there and we're going to be able to protect that house? Or is it so overgrown, so much debris in the yard, on the house, all that stuff, that it's like a death trap, not only for the firefighters, one, being in there. And so you go and assess these houses and it's either
Defensible or indefensible?
defensible.
Sorry.
No, it's great. I was trying to think of that. So defensible is the name. So if we can mitigate that fire so it doesn't do that. So it's not that we're forgetting houses, it's that it's not safe for us to be in there. Or potentially that house has enough, green lawn or, that the fire's going to go right around it and the fire department doesn't have any problems. They're going to go to the next house and try to mitigate that house. I know in the monastery fire years ago, it was going so fast, I don't even think there was any kind of mitigation on that because it was going so fast. All your resources are focused on putting out that fire, not necessarily, the houses that are in front of it.
Well, I noticed, I watched watched the Maui fire very, very closely because I thought my daughter was there. And there was a house that was completely fire-wise, over 100 years old, that was right in the middle of that town, and fire went right around it. So if you don't think your house is quite the way you want it, I would really look at what fire-wise means and what we have to do with trees, overgrown yards, trash, anything that burns, you want to make sure it's done. And you can always, and I'm talking more to the public than to Noah and our people here, but the expertise that the fire department has, that the 911 center has, that DNR has, that this gentleman has, all those things are priceless if you work with them ahead of time. Too late is a horrible place to be in a fire.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, go along with that, you know, cleaning up your property, making it fire-wise, even in town. Sometimes it sounds kind of silly, I guess, in a way, because you're like, well, I'm in town, you know, it can't happen here, right? But to have that dispensable space and maybe green grass, you know, different things like that, actually helps out tremendously. Does that answer the one question?
Yes. So I'll just add on that DNR and conservation districts are partnering in wildfire ready neighbors, and so at the website address, wildfireready.dnr.wa.gov, you can sign up for a home assessment. Someone will come out and take a look at your home, tell you what you can do to improve that defensible space, increase the defensible space, and potentially assist with some funding to try and make those changes happen. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll get to your question, hopefully. But I would submit that anybody that lives on the city limit boundary is in that wildland urban interface. So especially the inside the city limits is Observatory Hill, but everybody that's on the edge of town is butted up against wildland for all intents and purposes, whether it's grass or forested area. So, and that wildland fire can spread into town, as we've seen over and over again in the last 6 years, without much effort. So all of those places on the inside the city limits, but on the edge, is wildland urban interface. And not to let anything slip that shouldn't be, but that it should be common knowledge that the county building department is currently working on a wildland urban interface code specifically, and adopting the state WUI code and putting out specific things. I'm working with that building department director now, meeting with her on Thursday morning actually, to talk about what specific new codes we can put into place to help people build smartly, because all these building codes will be either new construction or renovations that it will affect. So it's very important. And how far we go in the county code, and how far you guys go in the city codes is totally, dependent on what we think is realistic, but it does make a big difference. As the mayor already said, you can see new neighborhoods in Maui that were constructed within the last couple of years using the new codes and with fire hardened construction and landscaping, and they're not burned. And the neighborhood right across the street is completely ash. So it does make a difference. And the DNR program is a great one to follow if you're in that, either the wildland or the wildland urban interface. Now, Phil, you're going to have to help me out with your specific questions so I can get back to that.
Yeah, there was, I don't know the details, there was a little bit ago that the state insurance changed the rating for Goldendale, the north side.
So there was a study put out a few years back, came out of some universities in California and Arizona, a joint study that listed a lot of the West Coast as high wildfire danger areas, and it included all the communities, cities and towns in that county as high hazard areas. The insurance companies have now taken note of that. It got posted on the Oregon Department of Forestry website a couple years ago, and they almost immediately took it down because of the backlash of what that meant. So now we have insurance companies that are not only not giving out new homeowners insurance policies based on the wildfire rating, but they're also not renewing. And I just heard of another case last week in our county where they're not renewing people's homeowners insurance because of the wildfire danger. So all these codes and doing the Firewise, or Lauren's right, they changed the name last year, and I can never remember the new name.
Fire Ready Neighbors now.
Ready Neighbor, yep.
Is that
So,
because
it's the
rural
same
areas are
code.
not mitigating?
No, it's because my professional opinion, is
Yeah.
because the people that created the study didn't do any on-the-ground fact checking and truthing. They used aerial imagery and other statistical data to come up with that. I think that a lot of the information they put out and the panic they created was overblown because of the type of data they used. It wasn't specific enough, but this condition still exists in our county and in our communities, but not to the level that they actually rated it at. And the insurance companies, like I said, are using that to their advantage. My other professional opinion is, as we've seen flood insurance go away from the major carriers, well, any carriers, the only place you can get flood insurance now is through FEMA, federal government. It would not surprise me if the insurance companies are now making the move that any wildfire insurance is only carried by the federal government, and that's the only place you can get it. That's the way I see this thing, because they're experiencing huge losses in all the fires we've already talked about. They can't sustain their business operation as insurance companies, paying out those kind of payments. So that's just my thoughts on where this is headed. And that would be too bad, but
And
it's a
well,
reality.
there's already several, like Chief Home mentioned, some one family, I've heard of a couple others just in this week whose insurance has dropped them from fire protection within the city limits. So
I know a local business and someone that has lost their fire insurance.
that's why
That's serious.
this conversation is important, and being engaged in that insurance ratings and things like that, because all they need is another excuse not to pay.
Something we can all have an effect on and do something about as individuals and as city and county government to try and mitigate those risks and push back against that issue. But, any other questions? Yes, sir.
It is not a question, but I think we need to review our city website and the links that the experts here feel we need or we don't have. Let's put them together so we're as fire-wise a community as we possibly can be. That's the only way to beat insurance being dropped.
And Mylan asked what the city can do to help. One of those things, we did it, we've done it a couple times. If you have through the city's mailings, right, water bills, whatever that you send out on a regular basis, that we could put a flyer in there about emergency preparedness, whatever it might be from the Department of Emergency Management. Put that in with your regular mailing to get it to all your folks. Because as Frank pointed out, we need people to sign up for those emergency notification system messages or they're not going to get them. Because so many people have dropped their home phone. Their hard line is not there anymore. That's what's built into our system when we purchased that service. But if you want a message and don't have a home phone, you have to go in and sign up for it. So that would be one thing. We struggle out of the 22 to 23,000 people in the county now, according to the census data and the updates. Well, what's the last total we have? 5,000 and some people in our system is all out of the 23,000 in the whole county. So there's so many people that haven't signed up yet. But if you're not gonna do that, you better be listening to the radio.
Do you have a copy of the county's urban interface ordinance that you were discussing?
The building department director and myself are gonna meet and go over a draft that she has.
Okay. At some point, can we?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll check with Lynn and we can get together on that. Anything else?
Any questions or comments from the council?
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate the initiative Roberto used to get this topic here. And I'm hoping we can carry it on further with the connections, at least through websites and things like that, so that people know when they're trying to scramble around trying to find what to put in the bag, they'll know a source, another source to help them with being firewise. Thank you. It's very, very helpful. I'd like for us to take maybe a 5-minute break. The mayor has, not this mayor, the other mayor has had a long day. He's been riding around in a fire truck. He's had all sorts of things going on. And he's about to head home, I think. Thank you, Mayor Prentice, very much. You've done a great job. It was fun having you.
Thank you.
Great, good job.
Good job.
The other one. Gotta get the whole
Go
thing.
around to Ellie, she's got your name tag for you.
The whole thing or the?
Yeah.
There you go, bud.
Bye, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
You can add this to your bag there,
So, should I keep this rolling?
We're just gonna take a 5-minute break,
So do you
so,
want me to cut it?
yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay.
You can pause it.